Welcome, welcome, welcome to the Mindy Jo News Show, where I share news that you can absolutely use. Let's get right to it. Well, today we have a great show, you guys. And guess what? Well, in recognition of World AIDS Day, we decided we'll have a little conversation about AIDS, but we just really want to focus more on healthy relationships. So that's why Mindy Jo went and sought out an expert. That's right. So Dr. B is here to give us, all of the great information we need on how to maintain healthy relationships, give us a little bit of information about this recent drug. We'll get to that and just share some more great information for us. So I'll let him introduce himself and then we'll get right into this great discussion.
Great. Thank you very much, Mindy Jo, and thank you in the listening audience for listening in to us and looking at us today as we prepare ourselves for a poignant and relevant conversation about what's going on in the world of relationships and life. I'm Dr. Baruch. I am a DC resident, been so all of my life, own a couple of restaurants, a third one on the way, father of 4 children, and I'm pretty comfortable being in front of the camera and talking about whatever it is that we need to talk about in order that we would be able to get this thing right, because Lord knows we need to get it right.
I agree with you, Dr. B. Yes, we definitely do. And speaking of getting things right, I just recently read the CDC, well, that's the Center for Disease Control, for those who didn't know. They recently had some information about this pre-exposure prophylaxis. I think I said that right, Doc.
That sounds right.
All right. Well, it's PrEP for short, and this is supposed to be taken daily to prevent getting HIV. It's for people who are without HIV, and it's recommended for those who are high risk. And some more things about this is that it's most effective when it's used in combination with condoms and drug treatment. So again, we have more drugs to take. So I don't know. So Dr. B, would you recommend, taking a drug daily just to prevent HIV? I mean, I don't know.
Well, I think in the world we live in today, first off, it's not the world that I grew up in when we didn't know anything about HIV and AIDS, and we didn't know anything about hardly herpes back when I was a youngster. Obviously, there's a different world that we live in today, and we have to be careful to protect ourselves. And because there's a lack of discipline, and we decide now that we just don't want to have any care, we want to live willy-nilly, we don't want to be concerned about anything other than I just want to enjoy myself in the moment. If you're one of those people, then you probably do fit in that category of high risk. And you're high risk for everything, though. Because if you're not disciplined and you're not responsible and you're not living life as a mature adult, then you need to be taking not only this drug, but it's probably like you need the pre-cancer drug, the pre-diabetes drug, the pre-high blood pressure drug, the pre-AIDS drug, the I'm about to do something really stupid drug. So, you need that whole category of things. So I would say for those of us who live responsibly, this probably doesn't make sense. But for those of us who are challenged with just doing what we're supposed to do, as opposed to, living life according to principles, we live life according to what provides us pleasure, then you might need something like this.
Okay, all right. Well, again, too, I did read, according to CDC, now it's more than 1.2 million people in the U.S. who are currently infected with HIV. So more than is not approximate number. It's not really accurate per se. So I suggest everybody just kind of do further research on those numbers right there. But it seems to be that also gay men are still the face of HIV. So can you just share a little bit about that?
Well, it's funny that you should use numbers. You know, the CDC, which I think at some point we need to move away from the CDC and start going to the CDE, which would be the Center for Disease Elimination. You know, when we get a company that's called the Center for Disease Elimination, I want to buy stock, I want to be a member, I want to be involved, I want to offer my input. But disease control sounds like, okay, we want to make sure that it doesn't go beyond this space here. And it's likely that that's going to be concentrated on people that are maybe a little less desirable, you think? But with regard to, you know, these new numbers that are coming out, I think it's important that we reflect on some other information that's out there. You and I have talked about a video that I was exposed to probably 10, 15 years ago called The House of Numbers. And I would encourage you all, anybody that has any time, any space, any thought, any concern about what's going on with your reproductive health, which is really what it is. You know, so people call it sexually transmitted diseases. It's really, the concern is for your reproductive health. The operative word in there is reproductive. When we get to the point where we're using it for the proper purpose, you find that a lot of this crap we don't even have to deal with. But going back to what you were saying, whether the numbers are really where they are or not, I think it has a lot to do with when you get your funding. So when you reach a certain number, you get a certain amount of funding from the Center for Disease Control or the World AIDS Alliance or the whatever. And I think some countries, some states, some counties, some cities are interested in reaching these numbers so that they can get these resources so that they can use them for the purposes of, well, whatever they want. I guess to some extent, some of those funds would go towards AIDS awareness and maybe giving people more of this PrEP drug and some more condoms or whatever, you know, I'm not sure. But I think it would be really great if we could funnel some of this money back into the school system and start educating and empowering people on how they can live their lives more productively and responsibly so that they don't have to worry about whether these things are going to ever cross their path.
Yeah, thank you for that, Dr. B. And speaking of numbers, I did also see again from the Center for Disease Control, maybe I need to find another resource, but they did say 30 years. We have actually been fighting this AIDS epidemic. I guess we can say it's an epidemic now, for over 30 years. So I don't know, Dr. B, is it safe to say that science has maybe kind of failed us a little bit?
Well, I think it's safe to say that science has failed somebody. Now, whether science has failed us depends on who the us is. I think it's, you can look at the people who have expired as a result of them encountering this so-called drug. Go look at the video, The House of Numbers. You'll know why I say it that way. Or this so-called disease. I'm sorry, so-called disease. There are many people that have died as a result of this so-called disease and this virus. And I think it's, yeah, I don't know that science has necessarily failed. It depends on who the scientists were and what their original agenda was. If their original agenda was to eliminate the high risk, you know, those 4 or 5 categories that you listed earlier, if their goal was to eliminate those people from having reproductive encounters with other people, then yeah, maybe they were successful. You know, because if you put somebody in a bed and give them drugs that cause their immune system to be suppressed, then chances are they're not going to live too long. Or if you tell people that, you know, in order to be safe, in order to be healthy, you need to have, you need to wear condoms. You don't necessarily do a good job of passing sperm through condoms, so chances are you're not going to reproduce life. Not that everybody who, you know, is reproducing life should be reproducing life, but, you know, just kind of getting into it a little bit, that I think that we have to consider the agenda. What has been the agenda? And if the agenda of those who created the drug was to eliminate mass quantities of people, job well done. If the agenda was that we would not be, but we would be working to help people get healthier, probably a failure.
Well, speaking of failures, I think Mr. Charlie Sheen has definitely failed a lot of actresses, maybe some actors perhaps, in Hollywood. So recently, Charlie Sheen decided he will come forth and reveal that he has HIV. Maybe he didn't know PrEP was around then, I don't know. But
I'm here to admit that I am in fact HIV positive, and I have to put a stop to this onslaught.
now let's switch a little gear and we'll talk about some healthy relationships. Lots of times, we kind of get in such fear with all of these sexually transmitted diseases that's going around, and it's kind of hard to maintain a healthy relationship because we're so scared, like, oh my goodness, if I kiss this person, if I touch this person, ooh, I'm gonna get the cooties and some more. So first things first, Dr. B, how do we know if we are in a healthy relationship?
Well, good question. Good question. And I think we have to define the purposes of our relationships. If the purpose of the relationship is pleasure, and both of you all are on the same page with regard to what it is that you're seeking to accomplish, more like a pickup basketball game. Okay, well, we'll do this thing for a minute because I like you. I'm kind of feeling you, and it kind of works for me right now. But know that this isn't going to last for long because I don't plan on it lasting long, because I plan on picking up another player within a week or two so that I can keep my rotation. Because some of us feel the need to be, as men, some of us men, we feel like we need to be sperm donors across broad cross sections of people. And, and so, yeah, that might be a healthy relationship. It depends on the purpose, though. Again, if the purpose and foundation is that you want to build a relationship so that you can finally land that one person that you want to spend the rest of your life with, then chances are that may not be the best course to take. And we then need to start redefining our values. We need to start redefining what's important to us. And we need to start aligning ourselves with people who have similar or compatible vision, compatible life, compatible goals, and compatible idea with regard to what our children, or whether we're going to have children, or how we're going to raise these children, compatibility with regard to spirituality. Are we going to engage? Are we not? If we are we going to both, go to the same place and do the same thing? Or are we okay with one doing one thing and the other doing the other? All those things need to be discussed and hashed out before we start looking at, man, I want to get into bed and just do something with you, especially if your goal is to build a healthy relationship on the road to, building a family or building on something that's more solid than just a jump off.
Yeah, well, thank you for that. And speaking of building a family, that seems to kind of be a void now. That seems to be missing out of a healthy relationship. Many people don't seem to want to really build families, I guess because a lot of people are tuned into love and hip hop and things like that, and they're not really focused on building families. So is it kind of time for us to get back to that?
Well, I think it's only time for us to get back to that if we want to perpetuate our lifeblood, our seed, if you want your DNA to go forward, then yeah, you do that. If you don't, then you don't, And I think a lot of this, you see what's going on, again, in our pursuit of pleasure. We've decided that this is a great category in order for us to achieve it. And see, the reality is, if your pursuit is pleasure, and we're talking about sexuality, if your pursuit is pleasure, then you don't need a woman. You don't necessarily need, a woman your age or a woman, there's so many categories. You don't even need a human being. Nowadays, you're hearing about things that people have decided that they can, achieve pleasurable experiences and arrive at, the destination, their desired happy endings without even it being a human, let alone alive even. There's a whole lot of stuff going on out there. And we have to reel ourselves in, for those of us who so desire, we have to reel ourselves in and get back to a point where, wait a minute, what are we here to do? I don't see any other creatures in creation doing all the crap that we're doing. And I've yet to see, out of all the dogs and cats in Washington, D.C., and especially in the area that I have restaurants, I have yet to see a dog pull over at the dog shop and get himself a prophylactic so that he doesn't impregnate his female dog. But so it's kind of crazy that we've gotten to the point that we are, but I think it's as a result of programming. So our television, our educational system, our music, our internet, the things that we engage on the internet, I think these things are all playing a role in what's causing us to think the way that we do, live the way that we do, engage one another the way that we do, and be okay with the outcomes the way we seemingly are. I hope I answered your question.
Yes, you did.
I answered some questions.
Yes. So, for those that want to consider, just the thought of, embracing a healthy relationship, just kind of, what are some tips? Just what are some things they can do just to kind of get on that path, in that direction?
Again, it's a great question. I think one of the things that you do is try to operate in your higher self, up here. Try to operate up here. You operate up here where you're engaging the brain and the mind and the energy and all the rest of that stuff. Try to operate up here first before you go, checking it out and finding yourself caught up, because now all the stuff that's up here doesn't matter anymore because you caught up, because you done got whatever, we'll leave it at caught up. So yeah, that would be my advice. So it's an interview. We should be interviewing. So what is your idea of raising children? What is your idea of a household? What is your idea of the balance between man and woman and how that works inside of a family environment? And, what's your relationship like with your mother? What's your relationship like with your father? Just so you get an idea of the backdrop. What kind of relationship have you had already with people of the opposite sex or people of the same sex, and people who you are supposed to have some type of respect and honor and dignity and have some subordinate relationship to, or otherwise, or have some working relationship with. How are you doing with the people that you work with at work? How are you doing with your brother and sister? You get along with anybody? Just me? And did it get better when we got into bed, or was it all right even before then? So all of those things need to be looked at, and it needs to be, in my opinion, the first step needs to be an interview. Hi, what's your vision? I want to know what somebody's vision is. What are you trying to do with your life? Because if you tell me nothing, I'm going to be like, okay, well, that's cool. It probably doesn't take a lot of work to get there. Yeah, and as a matter of fact, there goes my bus. I think I'm going to catch my bus, because my bus is taking me towards my vision, and you can hang out right here, because nowhere is going to take you exactly where you want to go. So I think that's an important first question, and there are many others, so that you go through this interview process and you challenge everything and you do the scenarios and you play them out and you ask questions hypothetically and you determine whether somebody has the kind of mindset, the thought process that you think is compatible with where it is you are, and likewise they should do the same thing with you. And if they don't have questions, then you got a question. Well, why don't you have any questions? So you have those questions, you go through the process, you come to the conclusion, this might be able to work. Then you go from there to, maybe we could start dating. But I think the first thing to do is we have to first qualify by going through the interview, much like a job. This is a relationship. You're building a relationship with somebody. This is going to be a working relationship, which I would think you would desire to be for the rest of your life. So if you're working to do this, you want to interview the person to make sure. You might need to get 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 different interviews already with this one person in order to qualify them, so that once you cross over this line and say, I'm ready to rock and roll, then you really are ready to rock and roll. Now, one thing we do know that our thoughts are validated many times by our words, and our words are validated many times by our actions. So you do not only want to rely on what somebody says, but you want to see a track record. Well, what have you done? And how have you done thus far with regard to relationships? Have you had success with this strategy that you've had? So it's a working thing, and you have to come to the conclusion that, okay, I'm in New York, we're flying to California. It's going to be turbulence. There's going to be changes in routes. There are going to be other planes that are going to be in the way. There's going to be a pack of birds that is, so we're going to have to change routes. We're going to have to make adjustments. But as long as we're in this to win this and we're working together, then we're going to get there. It might not be pretty. There are going to be downs, there are going to be ups, there's going to be ins and outs, but we're going to get there. And if we're committed to working together, then you have a better chance of being successful, rather than jumping in the bed first and saying, oh my God, this is the best experience I've ever had in my entire life. I think I'm ready to get married. Those don't ever work.
Yeah. Well, there you have it. Those don't ever work. So, sometimes those one nights, we might think that lasts a lifetime, but hey. And is honesty, want to know, is honesty a factor in a healthy relationship? I know now it's like, I'll say for women really have a lot of pressure right now from both ends, not only competition from other women, but competition from men as well. Well, transgender, I shall say. But some people aren't really honest. So does honesty play any type of factor in a healthy relationship?
I think, again, if you're working for a company and the people that you work for in the company aren't telling you the truth, at some point you realize that this isn't working for you. If they're not being honest with you, if they're not being upfront, if they have no integrity, it doesn't work for you. And again, we go back to the relationship scenario. It's the same thing. This is an organization you're building. You two are co-CEOs of an organization, and you would want to know that the person is telling you the truth. You would want to know that the person is not sending you a representative that you have to now pick through and determine, well, what's real and what's this artificial fake thing that you're presenting to me so that I would like you. So you got to get past a lot of that, and you want to make sure that you're successfully past that, and you've talked to them and made them feel comfortable with presenting their real selves, as opposed to presenting to you this artificial made up, fake this, fake that, lying and carrying on. Nobody wants that. And I think it's interesting that you bring that up, because I was just having a conversation with somebody about that with regard to even how we dress. The way that we dress and the things that we do to our physique, the things that we do to possibly cause people to not see what is really real and what's really not, has something to do with someone's integrity, believe it or not. So we were having a conversation about what women do to kind of change their appearance and what men do to change their appearance. And I'll only talk about what men do to change their appearance, because obviously I've decided not to do that. And you can imagine what that might be. Men have decided to cut all their hair off so that they look 20 years younger. And I think that that's a great strategy if that's the market you want to do your work in. But I think it's also somewhere in there is just the same artificialness that we sometimes put out there and say that, well, you know what, you wearing fake hair and that's not your real hair. Well, that ain't your real head neither. When you think about it, you're supposed to have something on there. Now, if it's going to have a big U shape in the middle, well, that says something, doesn't it? Or if it's all gray like mine is, that says something. But I think integrity is important, and I think integrity on all levels is important. I think honesty is critical. If you don't have honesty and integrity, then you're bound to crash, because at some point you're going to find out the truth, and the truth may not be very pleasant to you, and you may wish you had never engaged in the first place. And they got a lot of songs that sing about, what I wish I hadn't have done and had have done, and why did I ever meet you, and all that kind of good stuff.
Well, thank you for that. Thank you for that. So yes, people, remember, honesty is the best policy. No matter what your sexuality is, your sexual preference, honesty is always the best policy. Okay, so remember that. I saw a video of a man, he's married, he put his wife out on blast, for her side guy. So is it necessarily healthy, I guess, to say, to put our partner, our companion out on social media, to out them if they cheat on us or they break our hearts or whatever? Is that healthy for us?
Well, I think when you play it up against killing them, it might be good. It might be better than killing them, because I think sometimes crimes of passion will cause an individual to want to come home and choke the life out of a person. And if that was the other option, do the outing thing first, because that might get you what you're looking for, So, but otherwise, I don't know. I guess if you out somebody, at some level you're outing yourself. And if you're outing yourself, what are you outing about yourself? Because why, is homeboy over here getting your wife's attention? And do you really want that exposure? Because somebody's going to ask at some point, well, what were you doing or what weren't you doing that made what otherwise seems to be a rationally thinking individual make a decision to no longer be with you? And not just to no longer be with you, but to be with home slice, you know? And you may not want that exposure. You know, it might be good to keep it. You might find that at the end of the day, you haven't outed her, you've outed your own self. And that might not be what you want.
Thank you for that. So I guess you guys, everyone, just try to work your relationship out, you know, off of social media. But hey, I mean, if that's the last resort, you have to put them out on blast. You know, Mindy Jo News Show has a spot for you, always. Well, I don't think we're going to do that. But anyway, now we know that food is very important. Sure. And I will say that is a part of a healthy relationship. You know, especially if your companion, your partner knows how to cook. That's always beneficial to the relationship. Sure. But what are some good, you know, just healthy foods we can start to do to help us get on track to,
Sure.
you know?
Sure. Again, that's a great question. I think the first thing that you have to deal with regard to food is food, and the choices that we make with regard to food says a lot about one very important relationship, and that's the relationship that we have with ourselves. And if you don't have a good relationship with yourself, then you're likely to make really bad food choices because you don't care about yourself. And if we have low self-worth, then chances are not only do we not care about ourselves when we're at the dinner table, we don't care about ourselves when we're anywhere. You know, so it can be when you're at the party, when you're at the club, when you're at work, when you're at the gym, when you're wherever you might find yourself with your low self-worth, you might find that you're making not the best decisions on behalf of you. And if you're not making the best decisions on behalf of you, then chances are those decisions that are not in your best interest are not in your partner's best interest either. So you want to really kind of qualify people that, what do you think about diet? You know, hey, you know, in your interview process, what do you think about the food that you eat? Do you just pretty much eat anything? Do you ever consider that maybe some things are bad for you and maybe you shouldn't eat those? Oh, you don't. You just eat anything? Okay, great. So the standard American diet, or in our case, it might be the standard Black American diet, which means everything is fried. You know, do you just eat all of that stuff? Love it, huh? Oh, okay. Well, that says something about an individual, that they would think so little of themselves that they would engage in something that they can see all around them. Auntie, uncle, cousin, mama, daddy, grandpa, grandma, cousin, sister, brother. Everybody's dead of high blood pressure, heart disease, diabetes, all diet-related illnesses. You would have to scratch your head and say, okay, well, you obviously don't get it. And I don't want to be the one that has to wheel your behind around in a wheelchair for the last 20, 15 years of your life because you chose not to get it. You chose to make bad choices with regard to what it is that you consumed. You decided not to be responsible enough on the front end to take better care of yourself. And now I'm stuck with the job of caring for you, wiping your behind and emptying out your pee bucket for the rest of your life. And I say that, and I want to let you know that those of you who are in that space, I'm sensitive to you. I feel bad that you're in that space, both of you, those who have to pee in the bucket and those who have to empty the bucket. I feel bad for you. But I think at some level we have to begin to stop and recognize that the reason why we're in the health that we're in is because of the bad food choices that we're making. So when you're out looking for a mate, you do want to ask them the question, what do you eat? You know, you want to know their credit score, sure, that's good. But you want to know whether, look, hey, you know, what do you eat? What's going on inside of here? You know, why is it that you need to be taking all of these drugs to support? Well, because see, diabetes is not a deficiency of metformin, and high blood pressure is not a deficiency of the latest high blood pressure medication that's out there. And these other illnesses that we have are not deficiency of these chemicals. They're as a result of us not properly nourishing our bodies, toxifying our bodies, and us not hydrating, and us not getting physical activity like we should. And all of these things combined causes sickness. So you kind of want to check an individual out on the front end and determine whether they are going to be a candidate for being really, really sick. And if they're going to be a candidate for being really, really sick, then you have to figure that into your mind. Do you really want to be a nurse or a doctor for the rest of your life and have to take care of them? Because that may not be what you want to do. And if that's not what you want to do, then that needs to be a part of your interview process. And as that's a part of your interview process, it might begin to cancel some people out. Or you might find that it cancels yourself out. How about that?
And ladies, I'll say eat a lot of fruit. Fruit goes a long way, Well, Dr. B, I think our viewers are going to greatly appreciate this informative information. Great. And we will be sure to continue this discussion because I'm certain Charlie Sheen will be back on the scene with his HIV awareness campaign. And we just want to kind of get more in depth with that. And just what new drugs are going to come out. I mean, goodness gracious, keeping track of all these drugs that's coming out, that's just a lot in itself. But in the meantime, we're going to continue. We're going to take care of ourselves. We're going to maintain healthy relationships. That's right, everyone. And we're not going to live in this fear of, HIV, AIDS. We're not going to constantly live in that fear. We're going to start to take care of ourselves and maintain healthy relationships. And Dr. B, do you want to share something before we leave?
Sure. And I think ultimately you want to love yourself. And that's where we have to get to, because all of this is about loving yourself. If you love yourself, then a lot of this stuff that you're having problems with and drama with and it's causing you to trip up, it goes away. So love yourself, and love yourself enough to make better choices on behalf of yourself. And if you need some help, I'm here to help you. You can find me on Facebook. You can find me on Twitter. You can find me out there in the cyberspace world, for those of you who choose to engage. And I'd be more than happy to help you through that process. But in the meantime, preferably this information that we've shared with you has been beneficial to you. And share it with somebody else. And let other people know that there are people who are thinking, and maybe thinking just like you think, but you didn't think anybody was thinking like you thought. You thought you were the only one thinking like you think. But nope, there's others like us. And we need to let us know that we're out here. How about that? Thank you very much.
Well, that's all the news I have that you can absolutely use for today, December 1st, 2015.
It's the Mindy Joe News Show. It's the Mindy Joe News Show. It's the Mindy Joe News Show.
Welcome to the Mindy Joe News Show, where I share news that you can absolutely use.